I was 63 years old, living alone, and I believed my son was the only person I could trust. But last week I lied to him about being alone. That lie uncovered a horrifying crime planned against me. I was lucky to survive long enough to tell you this story. Welcome back to Dad's Real Life Revenge. Please subscribe and comment number 1 so we can begin this story. Before we start, I want to remind you of one thing. This is a true story. If you stay until the end, you will understand why I say that. It started every Sunday morning at exactly 7 o'clock. The phone on the wooden table would vibrate right on time. The default ringtone echoed through the empty house. My son, a successful businessman, always called with perfect precision. He asked about the weather. He asked about the hydrangeas blooming outside the house. And always the final question was about the pills. Dad, did you take the white pill yet? Did anyone come by to visit you today? I used to think it was the purest form of devotion from a caring son. I felt proud of how attentive he was. I took the pills exactly the way he instructed me to, without the slightest doubt. This house was too large for an old widower. His voice over the phone was the only thread connecting me to the outside world. But that concern slowly began to carry a different taste. It no longer sounded like love. It sounded like surveillance. Like a prison guard checking whether his inmate was still locked inside the cell. The 7 o'clock phone call became an invisible pressure, crushing down on me. I stared at the cup of coffee, growing cold on the table. The steam had vanished. The silence inside the house began squeezing my chest tighter every day. I glanced toward the plastic pill organizer divided neatly by days of the week. The pills sat there in silence, waiting for me. Or perhaps waiting for the end of me. Love and harm can wear the exact same clothes for a very long time before you finally see through the fabric. That Sunday morning, something small happened that changed everything. Frank, my best friend from college, showed up unexpectedly at my door. He carried a paper bag filled with pastries, and the same bright smile I remembered from 40 years ago. It had been 18 months since this house last heard another person's laughter besides mine. We sat together in the living room talking about old memories, old road trips, old mistakes, old dreams that now sounded like stories from another lifetime. The clock slowly crept towards 7 o'clock. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. Then the familiar ringtone shattered the warm silence of the room. Out of habit, I answered immediately. My son's calm voice came through the speaker. He asked about my health, like always. Asked whether my knees still hurt from the cold weather. Asked whether the hydrangeas outside were blooming again. Then suddenly he asked the question, "Dad, is anyone there with you today?" I looked at Frank. He smiled casually and motioned for me to keep talking. But in that exact moment, an icy sensation crawled down my spine. The instinct of a man who had lived through more than 6 decades whispered something terrifying into my ear. Hide the truth. I took a slow breath. Then I answered quietly, "No, I'm alone today." It was the first time in 18 months that I had lied to my son. A harmless little lie. Or so I thought. Because the reaction on the other end of the call froze the blood in my veins. There was no immediate response, only silence. A long silence. Not peaceful silence. Heavy silence. The kind of silence that feels alive. I could hear his faint breathing through the phone. He was thinking, processing the information. And then it came. A strange relief entered his voice. A disturbing softness. Like tension had suddenly drained out of his body. "Oh, that's good then. Make sure you get some rest, Dad." That single pause before he answered changed everything inside me forever. His relief was not the relief of a loving son knowing his father was safe. It was the relief of a predator realizing the prey was finally alone inside the trap. My hand was still trembling after I ended the call. Frank looked at me with concern and asked whether I was all right. I forced out a weak smile to calm him down. But deep inside me something had cracked wide open. I turned toward the window. Outside, the hydrangeas drooped under the pale morning sunlight. Why was my son relieved to know I was alone? What exactly was he hiding from me? The answer was waiting inside the pillbox the very next morning. And Frank was the one who accidentally saw it first. Monday morning, Frank woke up early and insisted on making breakfast for both of us himself. I sat quietly at the dining table, watching my old friend moving slowly around the kitchen. The smell of freshly ground coffee spread through the house, bringing a false sense of peace into the room. Frank opened the medicine cabinet to grab my weekly pill organizer. By routine, the Saturday compartment should have been completely empty. I had taken those pills 2 days earlier. But suddenly Frank froze. He walked toward me, holding the plastic container in his hand, his forehead wrinkled with confusion. "John, what's this little white pill? Why did you leave it in here?" I looked down at the transparent compartment. A small, round white pill rested silently at the bottom. My chest tightened instantly. My mind began spinning. I had always been extremely careful about my health. I never forgot my medication, especially my blood pressure prescription. Never. I picked up the pill slowly. Its surface was smooth. No letters, no markings. Then realization hit me like ice water. It looked nothing like the capsules my doctor prescribed. Not even close. None of my medications were white. A horrifying suspicion began crawling through my mind. Who put this pill inside my box? This house was locked down tightly. The smart security system only allowed 2 people access to the front door code. Me and my son. He was the only person who entered my house every Friday afternoon to clean the place and prepare my pills for the following week. The equation was painfully simple, and the answer was so devastating it nearly stopped my breathing. My son had switched my medication, but how long had he been doing it, and why? I slipped the pill quietly into my shirt pocket, forcing myself to stay calm so Frank would not panic. But beneath the table my hand had already curled into a tight fist. I stared at the coffee slowly growing cold beside me. The truth was opening in front of me like a bottomless black hole. That pill was not medication. It was evidence. Evidence of a slow and calculated murder. My only son, the person I loved more than my own life, had been poisoning me in silence. And suddenly the terrifying dizziness from the past few months came rushing back into my memory. The nights where my vision blurred, the moments where my legs collapsed beneath me, the terrifying feeling that my heart might simply stop beating before sunrise. Back then I thought old age was finally catching up with me. Now I realized something far worse. Someone had been helping death reach me faster. The white pill rested deep inside my pocket like a piece of frozen ice, and with it came memories I had desperately tried to ignore. For the past 3 months my body had been screaming for help. The dizzy spells came almost every afternoon. Without warning, the floor would tilt beneath my feet. My thoughts drifted constantly inside a thick fog. I lost focus, lost direction, lost pieces of myself little by little. I told myself it was old age. I believed my mind was simply beginning to fade. But the most terrifying part was remembering the moments when my son witnessed those collapses. He would see me stumbling beside the couch, gripping the furniture just to stay standing, his face always filled with panic and concern. "Dad, did you forget your medication again?" His voice sounded so caring. He rushed over to support my weight, guided me gently back to bed, poured me a glass of warm water with his own hands. At the time, I felt deeply moved by his devotion. Now, replaying those memories made my skin crawl, because I finally understood the truth. He saw everything. He watched my body grow weaker day after day from the pills he himself had secretly replaced, and he kept doing it anyway. Some nights I woke up gasping because the room felt unbearably suffocating. The smart climate system inside the house constantly changed temperatures at strange hours. Whenever I questioned it, my son always smiled softly. "I adjusted it for your health, Dad. The weather has been dangerous lately." That kindness now revealed its true face. It was not care. It was control. He wanted me weak. He wanted me exhausted. He wanted me to believe I could no longer take care of myself. I sat alone in the darkness of the living room, staring through the window at the hydrangeas outside slowly wilting from lack of water. I no longer had the strength to care for them. Exactly the future my beloved son seemed to be creating for me. But one mysterious pill was not enough. I needed undeniable proof. I needed to witness what he was doing with my own eyes. That night I made the most dangerous decision of my life. I secretly installed a tiny hidden camera inside the bathroom, directly above the medicine cabinet. Then I connected the feed to my old laptop and waited patiently for Friday to arrive. I had no idea what I was about to discover. But the footage recorded that night completely shattered the heart of a father forever. Friday afternoon arrived exactly as expected. My son walked through the front door carrying a bag of fresh fruit in one hand. He smiled casually, talked normally, acted exactly the way he always did. He cleaned the living room for a while before walking into the bathroom to prepare my medication for the following week. I sat silently in the bedroom nearby, my fingers tightly locked together. The laptop resting on my knees displayed the live feed from the hidden camera. Every instinct inside me whispered the same terrifying truth. This was the moment everything would be exposed. On the small screen, I watched him standing in front of the medicine cabinet. He had no idea a hidden lens was staring at him from the darkness. He opened my weekly pill organizer. Then slowly he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small plastic bottle with no label. My heart stopped. He poured several small white pills into his palm. The same hands I once held while teaching him how to walk were now carefully removing my yellow prescription capsules one by one and replacing them with the white pills. His movements were calm, precise, practiced. He never trembled. Every motion looked disturbingly familiar, like someone repeating a routine they had performed many times before. Occasionally he paused to listen for sounds coming from my bedroom. When he was certain I was not approaching, he continued. The face of my beloved son stared back at me through the screen, but I no longer recognized him. That was not the caring child I raised. That was a cold-blooded predator wearing the face of an angel. Pain crushed my chest so violently I could barely breathe. I covered my mouth with both hands to stop myself from sobbing out loud. Hot tears rolled down my face and splashed onto the laptop keyboard. That was my son, the little boy I once carried in my arms, the child I spent my entire life protecting. And now he was personally guiding his own father toward death. If you've made it this far into the story, then you already know this nightmare is only getting darker. Please take one quick second to like, subscribe, and comment number 2 so I know you're still here with me. Most people watch without doing it, but it truly helps our channel more than you realize. And trust me, what happens next is something you will never see coming. The moment he stepped out of the bathroom, I slammed the laptop shut. I had to use every ounce of strength left inside me to keep my voice steady when he said goodbye before leaving. Then the front door closed. The sound echoed through the house, like a coffin lid being sealed shut. I slowly collapsed onto the floor. Alone. Broken. The truth was finally undeniable, but the pain was almost too much to survive. I could not stay silent anymore. If I did nothing, I would die. The next morning I took one of the white pills and went directly to my doctor and the police. What they discovered inside my blood test results was not just poison. It revealed a horrifying secret about my son's real motive. I walked into the police station with a coldness that frightened even me. The weak-old man I had been no longer existed after the moment I closed that laptop the night before. On the detective's desk, I placed the small plastic bag containing the white pills alongside the footage from the hidden camera. 2 days later, the blood test results arrived from the central hospital. The older doctor looked at me with deep pity in his eyes. Then he slowly shook his head. He pointed toward the numbers on the medical report. My potassium levels had been pushed down to a dangerously critical point. The white pills were powerful diuretics. For an elderly man with a heart condition like mine, taking them continuously for several months would almost certainly trigger either a stroke or sudden heart failure. A perfect natural death. Clean. Silent. No obvious criminal evidence left behind. I stared at the report in silence while my hands slowly turned numb. My own son had not tried to kill me in anger. He had planned it patiently, scientifically. The financial investigation that followed exposed the rest of the nightmare. My son was drowning in debt. His cryptocurrency investments had collapsed. His real estate projects were frozen. The amount he owed was staggering. He needed money. Fast. A lot of money. Police investigators later found internet searches on his computer about the details of my life insurance policy. A $2 million policy I had signed 10 years earlier. With only one beneficiary. Him. That was the moment I understood the horrifying truth. My life had been reduced to a financial solution. Nothing more. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before walking back into my house that evening. Through the front window I could see the cup of coffee still sitting untouched on the table. Cold. Lifeless. Everything around me suddenly felt disgusting. The police proposed a plan to catch him the following Friday inside my own home. I had to pretend I knew nothing. I had to sit across from my son one final time and act like a helpless father who still trusted him completely. But how do you hug the person trying to murder you? How do you look into your child's eyes and still say the words "I love you"? The answer waited inside the suffocating confrontation that was about to destroy what remained of our family. Forever. The final Friday finally arrived. 2 plainclothes police officers were already hidden inside the back room of my house. I sat quietly in my armchair, forcing my breathing to remain steady. Then I heard the soft click of the front door unlocking. My son walked inside. The same warm smile rested on his face. The same gentle eyes. The same voice that used to make me feel safe. He walked over to me, placed a bag of groceries on the table, then leaned down beside my chair. His face overflowed with carefully crafted concern. "How are you feeling today, Dad?" Still getting dizzy, I looked directly into the eyes of the child I had spent my entire life raising. My chest tightened so hard it almost crushed the air out of me. But somehow I forced myself to smile. I told him I still felt weak, but seeing him always made me feel better. He nodded with quiet satisfaction. Then he stood up and walked toward the bathroom to perform the same ritual he had repeated every Friday for months. I watched his back disappear down the hallway. Every movement he made was now streaming live to the officers waiting in the next room. A few minutes later, he returned to the living room. In his hands were a glass of warm water and my prepared medication tray. He sat beside me carefully and held the water toward my trembling hands. "Your face looks worse lately, Dad. I think you need a stronger dose of supplements. Go ahead and take them. You'll feel better soon." Every instinct inside my body screamed at me to throw the pills across the room. But I had to finish the performance. I reached for the glass. My fingers brushed against his hand. Ice cold. Then suddenly, before the police revealed themselves, my son leaned forward and wrapped his arms tightly around me. He pressed his mouth close to my ear and whispered softly, "I love you so much, Dad. I want you to stay with me for a very long time." My heart shattered completely, because I knew that beneath those loving words lived a calculated murder plan driven by greed and desperation. And yet in that unbearable moment I still lifted my hand and gently patted his back. I whispered back, "I love you too." And the worst part was that I truly meant it. That was the real tragedy. Not the poison, not the betrayal, but the fact that even after discovering everything, a father's love inside me had refused to die. Then the illusion exploded apart. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. The officers burst into the living room and pinned my son to the ground instantly. The glass shattered. The pills scattered across the floor. My son screamed in shock as the handcuffs snapped around his wrists. But then something happened that froze every person in that room. Because instead of denying the crime, he started laughing. A cold, empty laugh. And the horrifying truth that came out of his mouth next left both me and the police completely speechless. When the handcuffs locked around his wrists, my son did not panic. He did not cry. He did not beg for forgiveness. He simply stood there staring at the two officers, with a hollow expression so empty it felt inhuman. Then slowly he turned toward me. A pale smile appeared on his face. And in an eerily calm voice he said, "See, Dad, I told you the world out there is dangerous. I'm the only one who can truly protect you." The room went completely silent. Even the officers froze for a moment. Those words felt far more terrifying than the poison itself. Over the following days, the investigation uncovered something far darker than financial desperation. Police did not only find the mountain of debt, they also discovered hidden psychiatric records my son had kept secret for years. After extensive evaluations, the medical specialists reached a conclusion that left me completely shattered. My son suffered from severe paranoid anxiety disorder. The crushing pressure of financial collapse had slowly broken his mind apart. He became obsessed with control, especially control over me. Yes, the life insurance money was part of the motive, but the most horrifying truth was this. In his twisted mind, he genuinely believed he was protecting me. He believed the outside world was filled with people waiting to harm our family. And according to the broken logic inside his head, the only way to keep me safe forever was to make me weak, dependent, unable to leave him. If I could no longer walk properly, if my memory faded, if I depended entirely on him for survival, then I would always remain under his control. Safe. That was the word he used repeatedly during questioning. Safe. It was not ordinary greed. It was love distorted into something sick and unrecognizable. My son wanted to become the sole savior of my life, even if it meant slowly killing me in the process. That truth hurt far more than simple betrayal ever could. I sat inside the observation room, staring through the one-way glass at my only child. He was murmuring softly to himself, His fingers moved unconsciously through the air, repeating the motion of sorting pills into imaginary compartments. At that moment, I no longer knew what justice even meant. What punishment fits a man who is both a calculated criminal and a deeply broken patient? Prison, a psychiatric institution, mercy, condemnation. The answer would come in a way neither my son nor I could have ever imagined. Instead of a loud courtroom trial and a long prison sentence, justice arrived in a very different form. Based on the psychiatric evaluations and forensic reports, the court ruled that my son would be committed to a mandatory psychiatric treatment facility. Not prison, a place with endless white walls and barred windows. A place where he would finally be forced to face the paranoid monster slowly consuming his mind. The day they transferred him away, I stood at a distance watching the ambulance disappear beyond the line of trees. I did not cry anymore. The pain had burned itself so deeply into me that it transformed into something colder, something empty. I returned home alone. The same house that once felt like an invisible prison suddenly seemed enormous and strangely quiet. The very first thing I did was change every security code connected to the smart home system. Then I picked up the remote control myself and adjusted the living room temperature to 26 degrees. The temperature I personally loved. Not the suffocating setting my son used to force on me while pretending it was for my own health. I walked into the bathroom and gathered every unidentified pill bottle I could find. Then, I dumped them straight into the trash. The sound of the white pills rattling into the plastic bag echoed through the room like chains finally breaking apart. For the first time in months, my life belonged to me again. I decided when to eat, when to sleep. And most importantly, I controlled my own yellow blood pressure medication with my own hands. I was no longer a week-old prey waiting for judgment from the son I once adored. And strangely enough, I realized something important. My revenge was never about violence. It was never about hatred. The greatest revenge was surviving. Waking up, taking my life back and continuing to live well despite everything that had happened. I lowered myself into the familiar armchair and made myself a fresh cup of hot coffee. Steam rose slowly into the air, carrying a rich smell through the house. For the first time in a very long while, the silence no longer felt suffocating. I looked out the window toward the hydrangeas outside. After days of neglect, they seemed to be slowly recovering beneath the warm sunlight. I truly believed the nightmare was finally over, that justice had won. But the following morning, when I stepped outside into the yard, I noticed something small hidden beneath the hydrangea bushes. And in that instant, I realized the nightmare was not finished yet. Beneath the hydrangea bushes my late wife once cared for so lovingly, I discovered an old spare key buried deep beneath the soft soil. It was the same key I believed had been lost years ago. That was when I realized something even more chilling. My son had been preparing this plan for a very long time. Long before the smart security system was ever installed. This betrayal was not a sudden moment of madness. It was a trap carefully built over years. I slowly sat down on the stone steps and stared at the blue hydrangeas beginning to recover beneath the fresh water I had given them that morning. And for the first time I accepted the cruelest truth of all. Love and destruction can exist inside the same person at the exact same time. My son truly did love me once. I believe that. But illness, fear, and greed twisted that love into something poisonous, something deadly. My story is a warning for anyone listening, because sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are also the ones quietly controlling and destroying you. Please never ignore the small warnings your instincts try to show you. Sometimes a lie told to the world becomes the most honest truth you ever tell yourself. Instinct can become the final lifeline when darkness closes in around you. So pay attention to the moment your heart tells you something is wrong. Listen to it. Follow it, because it might save your life the same way it saved mine. If this story gave you something meaningful to think about, please share it with the people you love, and leave a comment below telling me your thoughts. Thank you for walking beside me through this journey of reclaiming my life here on Dad's Real Life Revenge. Do not forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments, so you never miss the next hard lesson life may bring. I'll see you in the next video. I stood up slowly and brushed the dirt from my hands. That morning I made my own coffee. I took my own medication. And for the first time in a very long while, I no longer felt dizzy. The early morning sunlight spread across the yard, warming a soul that had finally survived the storm.